Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto and Hinata are Emperor and Empress of the West and Konoha wanted his help part 6. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. South Ichiyama, Southern Region. The largest city in the southern region, South Ichiyama was home to the week-long Imperial Tournament, of which the Emperor and Empress consort were present, taking in the tournament fights with great interest. However, Naruto and Hinata were not at the stadium, since the tournaments were over for the night. The Emperor and Empress consort was called into an emergency sit-down with an envoy from Iowa, led by the Godime Tsuchikage herself, Kuretsuchi. Naruto was no fool, which is why he had Tsunade and the elite guards here, just in case things degenerated. The Emperor and Empress consort were in the reception room of the Ichiyama Hotel, seated in chairs. Kuretsuchi herself was also seated, her squad of Junin-level ninja flanking her as well. Naruto was in his usual black attire, the longcoat casually slung over his chair, while his wife looked stunning in her Chisogam dress. The Godime Tsuchikage was in her robes of state, while her ninja were in their standard Junin attire. So is it true? Kuretsuchi asked. Are you the son of Minato Namakazi? I am, Naruto calmly replied. The Iowa ninja whispered among each other, while Kuretsuchi remained calm. So why is the son of our most hated enemy the Emperor of the Unified West? I was banished from Konoha 8 years ago, so I have no love for Konoha, Naruto replied. Especially for their current Hokage. Tsunade and a number of Konoha ninja are here because she asked for asylum, rather than serve under an oppressive and corrupt government. That, I have to agree with you, Kuretsuchi said. In fact, it was an envoy from Konoha who had notified us about you. Knowing Danzo, he hoped that Iowa would try and go to war with the Unified West, Naruto pointed out. Danzo hates me because he wanted me as Konoha's weapon, but he despises Iowa and Kumo more, as he wishes to rule not only Konoha, but he could be an even bigger threat to the east than I could be. The Godime cocked an eyebrow. Oh, Naruto leaned back in his seat. I have no intentions of invading the west, as I have told your grandfather when he came to Suna following the Akatsuki invasion. I am very content with my life here. Kuretsuchi studied the younger man for a long moment. You may be the son of the Yellow Flash, but I mistrust Danzo even more. The war with Kumo and Odo has pretty much left the stone with less than half of its forces. Kumo is even worse off than we are. If you agree to leave Iowa in peace, I promise you as Godime Tsuchikage not to interfere with your Pakera merchants, nor your allies in the east. Naruto and Hinata exchanged whispers for a moment before Naruto turned back to Kuretsuchi. As long as you don't interfere with Suna, Wave or Spring, we will not attack Iowa. Konoha is fair game, but not the fire capital itself or the daimyo, as he was the one who kept me out of the bingo book. Honor my requests, and I will not attack. My grandfather was right about you, Kuretsuchi said. You are indeed a wise and sensible ruler. I will honor your requests in exchange for Iowa's safety. Naruto nodded. Go in peace, Lady Tsuchikage. End flashback. I sent an imperial envoy to Iowa with the non-aggression pact, of which Kuretsuchi had signed. Iowa is out of the equation. Kumo is not that big of a threat, so I decided to leave them alone. But, if they attack Spring, then all bets are off. Entry 4. Sasuke Uchiha has blown through the competition. Only Takuma Chiba had given him a serious challenge. He has improved greatly since our last encounter. Who knows, if he defeats A, he might challenge me next. But as he fought his way through the tournament, I can see the determination in his eyes. I should know, since I had the same look in my own eyes when I united the West. Just as I was the hope for the people of the West, he holds the hope of the Konoha refugees on his shoulders. Maybe the will of fire is still alive in the Uchiha after all. Entry 5. The tournament is over. Sasuke Uchiha is the new champion. I had given it his all, but Sasuke had pulled through. The strange thing about it is that he had only one request, of which was relayed to me by the proctor. Sasuke wanted an audience with the Emperor, in other words, me. My first response to his request was no, but then that would make me a hypocrite, seeing as how I managed to get Maru and Asuma talking again. But it was Granny Tsunade that had talked me into making my peace with Sasuke. She told me that he was disgusted with how the civilian council had treated me just for doing my job. Kinda ironic how the one person I despise the most saw me not as the Nine Tails, but as a loyal ninja to the leaf. I hope I will not regret this, as I agreed to the meeting. I will arrange to meet with my former teammate at the Imperial Complex's private gardens once we return to Kimen. I still mistrust him after all this time, but I have put Konoha behind me. I am not the demon brat that they made me. Here, I am respected and loved by all. I really hope that I am not going to regret this. Imperial Complex, Palace Gardens. 2 days had passed since Sasuke had made the request following his victory at the Imperial Tournament. Since then, he had slowly gained the respect of not only his fellow refugees, as well as the admiration of the people of Kimen. It had also gained the attention of a young kunoichi who worked alongside the last Uchiha, a fire user like himself, and also the last of her clan. The attraction was mutual to Sasuke. Then Asuma dropped by his dorm that morning to deliver a message. He was to escort Sasuke to the Imperial Complex for his meeting with the Emperor. His CO was already notified, and Sasuke was in the clear. The younger Junin was then taken to the Imperial Complex, and told to wait for the Emperor in the Palace Gardens. Located at the back of the complex, Naruto had it done for Hinata as a wedding gift, think Shang Tsung's Palace Gardens, without the outworld-related stuff in it and the statues, seeing as how his wife loved flowers. Even Sasuke was impressed with the beauty of the gardens. Not even Konoha had something like this. The samurai believe that a perfect blossom is a rare thing. Sasuke turned around at the sound of the voice. Leaning up against the tree, dressed in his standard black attire, sans the longcoat, was his former teammate. Arms folded across his chest, Naruto Uzumaki Namakazi remained at his spot, looking at the sakura trees that Sasuke was admiring earlier. For them, they could spend their entire lives looking for the perfect blossom, and for them, it would not be a wasted life. He straightened himself up and walked towards his teammate. I had this place created for Hinata when we were married. She loves it here. Sasuke nodded, noticing for the first time that Naruto was taller than he was, if only slightly. It's very beautiful. For the record, I still don't trust you, Naruto continued. I almost refused this meeting outright. But after I managed to get Maru and Asuma back talking again, that would make me a hypocrite. So, here I am. What do you want, Uchiha? I came to ask for your forgiveness, Sasuke replied. For what had happened at the Valley of the End, and for causing your banishment. You didn't cause my banishment. Danzo, those two old geezers who were Sarutobi's teammates, the Banshee's mother and Hiashi were responsible for that. The only thing I was guilty of was just doing my job. But answer me this, why? Why run to Orochimaru, and risk being labeled as a missing ninja, when you had everything back in Konoha? You were the little prince, and what was I? The demon brat, the dead last. Sasuke took the Emperor's verbal barrage pretty well. I guess I really have no excuse for what I did. I wanted the power needed to kill my brother, and Orochimaru was the best idea at the time. I didn't know that my actions would end up destroying Cell 7. It was after you were banished, while I was holed up in the hospital, that I realized something. You may have been the Dobi of the Rookie 11, but you never did quit. Tsunade told me about you being the Jinchuriki to the Nine Tails, and even a blind man could see that you are not the fox incarnate. Otherwise, you would have pulled a Gaara and long since burned Konoha to the ground. Glad to see you're not as stupid as the Scarecrow and the Banshee, Naruto thought. He then asked, why did you come here? Redemption, mostly, the Uchiha replied. When Konoha was originally founded, Madara had nothing to his name. Now, history repeats itself. Only this time, I will not make the same mistakes Madara, Itachi, nor my father had made. You killed Itachi, something that I could never do. You pretty much have a habit of making the impossible possible. But the most important reason why I came here was to counter Madara's prophecy, the curse of hatred. Curse of hatred, Naruto repeated. The six-path sage adopted two boys. The eldest would be known as the clan ancestor of the Uchiha, the younger the clan ancestor of the Senju. Even though the boys were not related by blood, the six-path sage trained them both in the shinobi arts. When the six-path sage was dying, he made the younger brother, the Senju, his chosen heir, because he held the ideas of which Hashirama Senju would base his ideas regarding the will of fire. The Uchiha clan head did not take that very well, I suspect. Yeah, the Uchiha felt cheated out of his birthright, and waged war against the Senju. Thus began a cycle of hatred that transcended history, culminating in the mutual hostility between the Uchiha and Senju. Madara and Fugaku believed that the Uchiha would end up fighting the Senju to the death. You, being a descendant of the Senju through your mother's side, and me being the last Uchiha, Madara believed that as was fate that we would end up fighting to the death. So you knew about Madara? Sasuke nodded. He came to me, shortly before the Suna Akatsuki War, and led me to the underground chambers inside the main house of the Uchiha. There, he explained it all to me, that I was destined to fight you until one of us died. Before that, I found the papers regarding my father's plans for the attempted coup. Madara had used Itachi to slaughter the clan. Itachi was good, but he was no match for the eternal Magankyu Sharingan. What do you think? Naruto asked. I think you said it best before you fought Neji in T-Country. There is no such thing as fate. There is only choice. It was my choice to reject the curse of hatred, because it had all but brought the Uchiha to ruin. It was my choice to leave Konoha rather than to serve under Danzo. And it was my choice to come here asking for your forgiveness. You offered my friendship, and I ended up shoving a Chidori into your chest as a result. Much to Naruto's surprise, Sasuke went down on one knee. Emperor Namakazi, I Sasuke Uchiha, do formally dedicate myself and the Uchiha clan into the service of the unified West. I will not make the same mistakes that my father and Madara had made. If you ask it, I will even give you my life. For one full minute, Naruto looked at Sasuke. Then he ordered him to rise. I'm not going to have you killed, Sasuke. I'm not a bloodthirsty butcher. But like I've told the clans when I summoned them here, you must earn your redemption. But coming here and admitting your faults, that did take major courage from your part. I guess we both had some growing up to do. Ironically, Konoha was holding me back from reaching my true potential. So the banishment was a blessing in disguise. You've earned my forgiveness, but what I've said about your redemption will remain. Sasuke bowed. Thank you, Your Majesty. Naruto waved him off. Don't bother with that. Most people around here call me Chief. Goes back to when I was uniting the lands. There's something you should know about Shimura, before I forget. He has the Sharingan. Sasuke's eyes went wide. What? Are you sure? The Emperor nodded. One implanted in his left eye, which he keeps concealed by his bandages, and a mechanical arm loaded with 10 of them. He must have gotten them after the Uchiha massacre. He was no match for my fox eye, though. But he is still more dangerous than ever. Will you go to war against Konoha? I hope not, but the Rokudaime and his lackeys still has it in for me, despite me being the emperor. He tried to invade Wave, but I managed to convince Tazuma to allow my units to destroy the bridge. Wave is safe for the time being. But sooner or later, the unified West will be forced into a showdown with Konoha. By that time, the Fire Lord would have been finished with the creation of his new village and will strip Konoha of its hidden village status. A fate worse than death for a shinobi village, I'm sure. Sasuke replied. If Konoha's status as a shinobi village is removed, then they will lose all perks and benefits that comes with the rights of being a shinobi village. No military aid, no shinobi. Danzo and Hiashi will flip out if that happens. Before the conversation could continue, one of the Imperial ninja who was assigned to the complex appeared via Shunshin. Lord Namakazi, your wife is waiting for you inside the council chambers. The other council members are starting to arrive. Naruto dismissed the ninja. Naruto dismissed him as well. This meeting is over. Return to your post, Uchiha. Once Sasuke was gone, Naruto addressed the third party that was watching from the shadows. You think he was telling me the truth? Katami appeared from behind the tree she was hiding. He sounded sincere, but only time will tell whether or not he will prove his worth, the Nine Tails replied. I'm surprised you didn't end up fighting him. Naruto chuckled as both he and Katami walked up the pathway. Are you kidding? Hinata would be pretty pissed if someone trashed her gardens. Seeing Hinata mad with her Byakugan activated is something no one wants to see. True, Katami said. I do believe she did that on you several times. It had taken them a week, traveling from Spring Country to catch a boat, but the Konoha envoy had finally arrived in the imperial capital. Sakura Haruno and Hanmura Mitokado, both representing the Konoha Council and the Konoha Mercantile Guild and Hanabi Hyuga, along with their escort, 3 Konoha Anbu and 3 Hyuga ninja, took in the sights of the imperial capital as they made their way to the imperial complex. Danzo and the Konoha Council had made it clear. This was an SS-class mission of the utmost importance. The Konoha envoy was to set their demands down upon the Demon Emperor and his whore. Failure to comply would result in a declaration of war upon the United West and their allies. Unknown to them, someone from Konoha had saw their arrival. As they passed the Suna consulate, Shikamaru had noticed the Konoha envoy and after excusing himself, ran for the imperial complex. Inside the imperial council chambers, Naruto and Hinata was looking over the reports regarding the Medic Ninja Corps program that Tsunade had developed along with Kokura Yamada. Ino Yamanaka stood before the imperial council, having delivered the reports herself from the hospital. Despite having united the West, Naruto still had to contend with uprisings from highwaymen, bandits, and remnants in both regions looking for their own slice of the pie. Naruto's methods in dealing with men like these were simple. Lay down your arms, join the unified West and enjoy the benefits and perks of serving under him, or face complete destruction. The smart ones chose to join up, while those continued to fight, and were summarily annihilated. The Imperial Medic Ninja program started by Lady Tsunade and Lady Yamada has proven to produce very effective results, Naruto said as he passed the reports down to Hinata and A. With each squad having a medic ninja, casualties will be down by more than half. Congratulations. Thank you, Chief, Ino replied. She had heard that Naruto preferred to be called Chief, rather than the more formal, Your Imperial Majesty. She had also seen how he was a hardworking, and just emperor. Not to mention that Hinata had made an excellent match for him. But things between her and Haku were taking off as well. Before the meeting could continue, Asuma Sarutobi rushed inside the room, followed by a breathless Shikamaru Nara. Lord Namakazi. Lady Namakazi. Shikamaru panted. Troublesome. What is it? Hinata asked. There's an envoy from Konoha on their way here, Asuma reported. Shikamaru saw them as they passed the Suna consulate. He just told me. 9 in total, Lord Namakazi. Sakura Haruno, Hanmura Mitokado, Hanabi Hyuga, and 6 ninja, 3 from Konoha Anbu and the other 3 from the Hyuga. They should be here in less than 10 minutes. Naruto's eyes narrowed, as did Hinata's. Katami and A were both wondering if Konoha had a death wish. The council members whispered among themselves. Ino gasped, as their past was about to come back to haunt them with a vengeance. Naruto immediately took action. Have the complex guards on standby in case they try anything, he ordered. Asuma, rally the guards and tell them to come here immediately. Naruto and Hinata were not taking any chances. The 9-member team of elite bodyguards were stationed behind the Emperor and Empress consort, ready to defend their Emperor and Empress from any threats. Katami was also present, having changed out of her kimono and into her ninja uniform. You'd think they'd learn by now. Naruto mused. Hinata turned to her husband. You think Konoha would learn that they are not the strongest village anymore? Oh well, I'll send word to the Fire Lord and tell him to proceed with the plan. But first, we need to deal with our guests. They didn't have to wait for very long, as one of the valets had led the Konoha envoy inside the council chambers. Hanmura, Sakura and Hanabi were shocked once the news that Naruto was the Emperor of the Unified West was released, but seeing him seated with Hinata at his side was indeed something that were not expecting. Even more, they had been led to the council chambers, of which all of the council members had either cross nor angry looks on their faces. The 6 ninja remained at the door while the 3 representatives stepped forward and stopped in front of the table containing the Emperor, the Empress consort, his chief prime minister and his chief advisor. Naruto glared back at the intruders who dared to arrive uninvited at his doorstep. They glared back at him. You are guests in my home, Naruto noted. The least you can do is show the proper respect for your betters. You are no better than us, you. Sakura began before she was silenced by Hanmura. As I've said, Naruto repeated. You are guests in my home, and in my empire. You should choose your words very carefully, otherwise you will not return to Konoha alive. You are outnumbered, as my council not only advises me in all things pertaining to the Unified West, but can kill each and every one the Konoha ninja 100 times over. That very much was true. Despite having the elite Konoha Anbu and the best of the Hyuga ninja backing them up, the Konoha ninja were still outnumbered. Hanmura straightened himself up and retrieved a scroll. Naruto Uzumaki, I bring word from the Rokudaime Hokage, Danzo Shimura. He unrolled the scroll and began to read off from it. By order of the Rokudaime Hokage and the Council of Konoha, Tsunade Senju and Jiraiya, along with the clans and high-ranking Chunin and Junin are declared traitors to the Leaf and are ordered to return to Konohagakure no Sato to face charges of desertion and dereliction of duty. Second, the Pakara merchant house is to be liquidated. Its income and properties are now the property of Asuna Haruno and the Konoha Mercantile Guild. Third, by order of the Rokudaime Hokage and Hyuga clan head, Hiyashi Hyuga, your marriage to Hinata Hyuga is declared null and void, and Hinata is to immediately return to Konohagakure no Sato to face the Hyuga clan's justice. At that, Ryuji and Haruka snorted. Hinata on the other hand looked amused. Hanmura continued reading. Fourth, all monies from the Senju accounts and any and all monies from the Namakazi clan as well as all jutsu taken from the Konoha library, as well as the forbidden scroll are forfeit and to be returned to the Leaf effective immediately. This also include all monies which you have gained as Emperor of the Unified West, including said accounts in Spring and Tea countries. Fifth, under the Konoha Clan Restoration Act, Sasuke Uchiha is to be married to Sakura Haruno upon his return to Konohagakure no Sato in order to preserve the Sharingan. You are to also surrender the names of your shinobi and samurai clans and send them to Konoha in order for the Leaf to regain her standing as the strongest of the shinobi villages. The gathered council members looked at Hanmura as if he had lost his mind. Hanmura finally got to the last part of the scroll. And last, you, Naruto Uzumaki, the demon of Konoha, are to abdicate your throne and return to Konohagakure no Sato to face a war tribunal for crimes against the Leaf. The Jinchuriki under your control are also under the control of Konohagakure no Sato, and are to be initiated into the Anbu. He looked up, rolled up the scroll. So ordered by the Rokudaime Hokage of Konoha, Danzo Shimura. Hanmura handed over the scroll to the nearby valet, who in turn handed it over to the Emperor, who looked the scroll over, alongside Hinata and A. And what is to happen to the clan heads upon returning to Konoha? Hinata asked. They will be executed as an example to show that desertion from the Leaf will not be tolerated, and their children will be initiated into the Anbu, Hanmura replied. Hiashi will personally execute Neji Hyuga and the branch council. You think you can just waltz into my home uninvited with your paper shield and make such ridiculous demands of myself and of the unified West? Naruto asked as he shoved the scroll to the side. And what makes you think that I, let alone my wife, will bow to your demands? If you do not wish to see your allies in Wave or the Spring Daimyo suffer the wrath of Konoha once we invade, you will make the right decision and submit to the will of the leaf, Sakura shot back. She then got a real evil smile on her face. Does this council know about your tenant? That you are the Nine Tails Reborn? I'm willing to bet that they would hand you over when they find out how much of a demon you are. Much to her surprise, Naruto glared back at her without fear. They already know about me being the Jinchuriki. Or former Jinchuriki. I freed the Nine Tails from the seal a long time ago. He jerked a thumb in Katami's direction. She's seated beside me. Sakura, Hanabi and Hanmura looked at the stunning redhead, who was rising from her seat, then back at the smug emperor. They thought that Kiba was lying about the Nine Tails being a redhead in human form. The killer intent washed over the Konoha envoy. Even the Hyuga and Anbu were taken aback by the Biju Queen's aura. Then they saw the 9 fox tails emerge from her backside. And they knew what Naruto was said was indeed true. All this time, they had abused the boy all for nothing. The same boy that was the son of the Yondaime. Be careful who you insult, Sakura Haruno, Katami warned. You may not like the consequences of your actions. The 6 ninja went for their weapons, but Hanmura ordered them to stay their hands. The fact that Naruto was not the demon fox had definitely complicated things. Danzo must have balls as big as temple bells to think he can boss me around, despite orchestrating my banishment alongside Hiashi, your buddy on the council, and that harpy of a Haruno. At that, Hanmura's eyes went wide. Of course I know, Naruto continued. I found out after the Suna Akatsuki War. I could have had Tsunade kill all of you at that time, or better yet, I could have you executed, then invade Konoha and finish what the Nine Tails have started. It took me getting tossed on my to see that the corruption in Konoha is far too deep. And here you are, in my home, making demands as if I was a genin, the nerve. You have no choice in the matter, Sakura sneered. Are you willing to risk the destruction of your allies? No, because Konoha is weak, Naruto replied. Your threats are as empty as the village's soul. Tell me, did you manage to regain any of the alliances you had because of me? No, I thought as much. These past 8 years have all but weakened Konoha. Hell, even Kumo and Iwa could invade the Leaf and still win. As for your demands, Hinata chimed in, you can take them and shove it. You have no choice in the matter, Hanabi shot back. There's always a choice, A said. You just made the wrong one in thinking you can make demands of the Emperor. That Emperor is a genin of Konohagakure no Sato. Hanmura shouted, pointing at the Emperor. Oh, so now that I am the most powerful man in the West with an army, not to mention giving Konoha one black eye after the other by defeating Konoha's finest am I a genin. I don't answer to Konoha, its Rokudaime Hokage, or to any of you. The unified West does not recognize the authority of Konohagakure no Sato, not its council or the likes of you. Then you will risk having Konoha invade Wave and Spring, Hanabi pointed out. Oh, you are such a fool, Hanabi, Hinata said. Danzo tried to send an invading force to Wave, but we ended up destroying the bridge. Spring Country's hidden shinobi village is up and running, has been for the past 5 years, and will defend their land and their daimyo from any and all threats. Mist and Suna will decimate your forces while we will sit back and watch. Your forces have been weakened, and would not stand even a siege, so don't you dare make demands of us. Hanmura knew that Hinata was right. He had hoped that Danzu's bluff could force the unified West into capitulation, but he could see that it had failed. Konoha had fallen from grace the past 8 years when Naruto was banished. The exodus of the village's most powerful clans and ninja has left Konoha on the brink. Furthermore, The Konoha refugees are under the protection of the unified West, Naruto continued. The Pakera merchant house will not surrender its resources nor its wars to the Banshee's mother. And I will not hand over the fortunes of the Namakazi clan, my clan. You are no Namakazi, Hanmura grated. You're just an orphan, a nobody. Naruto didn't stop. We can care less what Konoha and Hiashi could think about our marriage. And we will not surrender our clans nor will I surrender the Jinchuriki for Danzo's intentions. Last, I will not abdicate my throne. He rose from his seat. You think you can dictate orders to me like a genin? I can kill you myself and send your bodies back to the Warhawk as a warning. But I will not do that. You're going to let us go? Hanabi asked. No. You are going to spend time inside the Imperial dungeons, Hinata replied. You will stay there for the night, and afterward, you will return home. I suggest you do what is good for you and allow us to walk out of here, Hanmura replied. Otherwise you will have a bloodbath on your hands. The ninja here are Konoha elite. Do you think you have a chance against us? Naruto looked amused. Then he activated a hidden seal. Hanmura, Sakura and Hanabi, as well as the 6 ninja fell to their knees, as the chakra-draining seals took effect, draining their bodies of energy, but not killing them. Once the Konoha ninja were effectively disabled, a squad of Imperial ninja entered the room, stripped the Konoha envoy of their weapons, and hauled them out of the council chambers. Naruto grinned as Sakura shouted death curses at him and Hinata. The seal was a basic one, yet effective. It was something that he had used before during the Unification Wars, and it had saved his life on many an occasion. Hinata looked at her husband, her expression mirroring that of her husband. You truly are unpredictable, love, Hinata said. And you love me for it, was the Emperor's reply. He retrieved the Konoha scroll. This can be useful to our advantage. How? Easy. The clans from Konoha and the ninja will need to know about this. Naruto turned to Asuma. I want all clans and ninja assembled in the North Kimin Public Assembly in 1 hour. Make it so, Sarutobi. Asuma bowed. Yes, Chief. What are you going to do? Sanshi asked after Asuma had left. Cement the loyalty of the refugees to my cause, Naruto replied as he retrieved his longcoat and slipped it over his shoulders. This meeting is adjourned. Katami, Hinata, you're with me. North Kimin Public Assembly, 1 hour later. Before Kimin had expanded into a city, the assembly once served as its town square. Then Rokubungi Oda had moved in and expanded Kimin city tenfold. Now, the public assembly was filled with the Konoha refugees, with the clan heads taking the front. Sasuke Uchiha stood beside Neji Hyuga and Sume Inuzuka, curious as to why the Emperor has called for a meeting of the Konoha refugees. Standing in the clearing, longcoat fluttering in the gentle wind, Naruto scanned the gathered audience. The clan heads and their families were present, as were the Chunin and Junin, some of which were on the rooftops, looking down at him. Even Tsunade and Jiraiya stood among the clans, wondering what Naruto had up his sleeve. Hinata was at his side, while Katami and A remained behind. Less than 2 hours ago, an envoy from Konohagakure no Sato arrived on my doorstep, Naruto began, his voice radiating power. He brandished the scroll. They came to the imperial capital, and entered our home uninvited to order me and my wife around, making demands that I cannot and will not meet. He tossed the scroll to Jiraiya, who unrolled it and began to read it alongside Tsunade. The Rokudaime Hokage has declared all of you traitors to the Leaf, and has ordered your return to the Leaf, where the clan heads will face execution, and their children will be forcibly initiated into his root Anbu. A chorus of, no, erupted from the ninja. He and Hiashi Hyuga have declared my marriage to Hinata invalid and have ordered her to return to Konoha, where she will most likely face death. They have also declared that Sasuke Uchiha is to be married to Sakura Haruno in order to preserve the Sharingan. At that, Sasuke blanched. They also demanded the liquidation of the Pakera merchant house in order to line the pockets of the Konoha Mercantile Guild, Naruto continued, his voice unwavering, as well as any and all monies from your clans, the Senju clan and the Namakazi clans forfeit. Danzo also demands that I send the clans of the Unified West, as well as the Jinchuriki under my banner to Konoha for the purpose of regaining the strength that it had lost through their own actions. And last, they demand that I give up my throne, and return to Konoha to face war crimes. By that time, the scroll had passed on to the elder Ino Shika Cho trio. The scroll contained the Hokage insignia, as well as Danzu's signature. It had all but verified Naruto's claims. Even now, Konoha curses my existence. Danzo wanted me as a mindless weapon when I was growing up, and following the Uchiha retrieval mission, had me banished when he saw that I could not be controlled. Even now, after the Suna Akatsuki War, he has seen me as a credible threat. I have no intention of going to war, but I will defend not only my interests back in the East, but my allies as well. He believes that a ninja should kill their emotions. I believe otherwise. It what makes us human. Oh, he knows how to work it, Jiraiya whispered to Tsunade, noticing that the young emperor's charismatic side was starting to emerge. I have no intentions of invading Konoha, or anywhere else in the east, Naruto continued. I am very content with what I have in the west. But if Danzo continues down this path, he will be dealt with extreme prejudice. You still have your concerns with coming here, and that is understandable. But I have to know, where does your loyalties lie? Jiraiya noticed that Naruto did not say, himself or Konoha. That was a smart move. Then he saw Shikaku step forward to face the Emperor. You could have destroyed Konoha at any given moment, the Nara clan head said. You could have wiped all of us out of spite. But you didn't. You and your old man are a rare breed. You don't let the past dictate your actions in the present. After seeing that scroll and what Danzo tried to do to our kids, I'll take my chances here. Same here, Inoichi said. Me too, Chusa added. You showed me twice that no one is bound to fate, Neji said. You truly can make the impossible possible, regardless of your lot in life. There is nothing left for us back in Konoha. My allegiance is with the Unified West. You have the Inuzuka at your command, Sum said. Nara was right. Despite our earlier threats to kill you, you did not hold it against us. Konoha has indeed lost the will of fire. But it lives here. My father loved Konoha, Asuma continued, but he would be appalled as to what it had become. The Sarutobi clan is at the service of the Unified West. Shibi and Shino exchanged glances. Then the elder Aburame spoke. The Aburame clan is at the Unified West's disposal. Someone in the back then chanted Naruto's name. Seconds later, the clans and everyone else were chanting his name, in a show of support for the United West. Jiraiya watched all of this with a broad smile on his face. Oh, the kid definitely knows how to work the crowd, he thought. He made a mental note to talk to him later about taking over as the next Toad Sage. The following day, Naruto stood out in the courtyard, Hinata by his side as the Imperial Guards, escorted, the Konoha envoy from the dungeons. Hanmura, Sakura and Hanabi looked worse for the wear, while their escort looked worse for the wear. Naruto had made it where given their location of their cells, they could hear Ibiki and Zabuza's interrogation sessions, as the pair was pulling an all-nighter, dealing with some highwaymen. Psychological warfare at its finest. You will be sent back to Fire Country to give your report to the Rokudaime, Naruto decreed. And give him a message for me. Any acts of aggression will result in my becoming very angry. I orchestrated the destruction of the Akatsuki, and I can do the same to Konoha. At that, the elder and the two women gulped. Seeing that his threat had the prophet effect, Naruto turned around and activated the fox eye. His eyes going from cerulean to gold, he began to perform hand seals, picking up speed, before clapping his hands, shouting, Imperial style, Demon's Gate Jutsu. Hanmura, Sakura, Hanabi and the 6 ninja watched in awe as a massive steel gate, half the size of the main gates in Konoha, but still impressive, rose from the ground. Carved into the gates were the images of the tailed beasts from the one tail to the 9 tails. A massive lock was released and the doors flung open, releasing ice-cold air. After that, there was nothing but darkness. The Imperial ninja and samurai grabbed the Konoha envoy and despite their pleas, threw them through the gate. The gate then slammed shut and dissipated, its power spent. The Demon's Gate Jutsu was one of the more powerful variants of the Hiroshin. It was a time-space jutsu, designed to move a large amount of people from one place to another in far less time. Naruto had used the Demon's Gate to send them back to the Konoha gates. By the time Hanmura would give his report, the fire daimyo would have come into play, and Konoha would be finished as a ninja village. Konohagakure no Sato, Council Chambers. Things had changed since Danzo had seized control of Konoha. The first thing he had done was to dissolve the council, and reformed it using nothing but loyal shinobi. The second thing he had done was to weed out any and all dissidents to his rule, and had them executed. Loyalty was to the leaf, and to him above all else. Dissension was not tolerated. Second, he made plans to send his root Anbu scouts to kidnap promising genin from the minor villages and have them brought back to Konoha, where they will be initiated into the root Anbu. Last, he sent Hanmura Mitokado, Sakura Haruno and Hanabi Hyuga with his list of demands to the United West, with the threat or war on the allies of the United West. From the look of things, the mission was a failure. Seated at the Hokage's chair in his robes of state, Asuna Haruno, Kaharu Udatane and Hiashi Hyuga flanking him, Danzo gave the order to report, to which Hanmura had done in great detail, completing the report with the threat of Naruto invading Konoha should any of his interests and/or allies are attacked. Danzo dismissed the trio, but not before ordering the execution of the 6 Hyuga ninja and the Konoha Anbu for failing to protect the envoy. Failure was another thing that was not tolerated in Konoha. You either complete your mission, or die. So the Demon Emperor has refused our demands, Danzo said. Very well. I was hoping that we could reach an agreement without any blood being spilled. But now, the time for talking is over. Agreed, Hiashi replied. I propose that we set up a forward operations base in Whirlpool Country, and build up our forces there. Once our forces are strong enough, we will strike at Spring Country first. Danzo nodded. I agree with you, Hiashi. I will also send out my scouts to the minor villages in order to bring in some fresh recruits to rebuild Konoha's strength. It will take some time, but once Konoha is back on its feet, the shinobi world will soon fear the might of the leaf. After Danzo had said that a root Anbu appeared via Shunshin, Lord Hokage, there is a courier ninja from the fire capital here to see you. Danzo nodded and seconds later, a courier ninja entered the room. He presented a scroll to Danzo, saying, "From the Fire Lord," before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Danzo looked at the seal. It was from the Fire Lord, all right. He broke it and began to read its contents. Hiashi and Asuna were reading over his shoulder, and all three were shocked as to what the scroll's contents contained. In essence, it was Konoha's death certificate. Notice of liquidation. By order of the Lord of Fire Country, the village of Konohagakure no Sato is hereby stripped of hidden village status. All honors and benefits of Konohagakure no Sato are hereby revoked. This notice has been relayed to Kumo, Iwa, Suna and Mist. All military aid is hereby ceased and Konohagakure is ordered to repay the military aid given for the last 6 months to the Fire Lord. All bounties and placements in the Konohagakure bingo book are now invalid. All shinobi clans are stripped of clan status and are ordered to surrender half of their clan's finances to Fire Country. All ninja are stripped of their ranks of genin, chunin and junin and are declared civilians. Accountants from the Fire Capital will arrive by the end of the week in order to audit the village and to seize any assets necessary for the good of Fire Country. So ordered by the Lord of the Land of Fire. Oh God, we're ruined, Kaharu lamented as she grasped her chest. We're finished, she managed to gasp out before keeling over. A medic ninja who had stayed in Konoha rushed over to the frail old woman, and checked for a pulse. There was none. Koharu Utatane was dead from a heart attack, unable to face the fact that Konoha was no longer a shinobi village. She turned to Danzo, Hiashi and Asuna. She's dead, the medic said. Hiashi sank back into his seat. Ever since the founding of Konoha, the Hyuga was one of the main noble clans. Now, the fire daimyo had stripped them of that honor and status. He was very, very angry. Word had spread throughout Konohagakure no Sato about the fire daimyo's judgment. Overnight, the Leaf Village had gone from being a shinobi village to just a plain village. Chunin and Junin were stripped of their ninja ranks and reduced to civilians. Some even committed suicide or fled the disgraced village, seeing as how Konoha's bingo book was now useless. Upon hearing the news that Konoha was no longer a shinobi village, Hanmura had committed suicide. As expected, the audit team had arrived in Konoha the following day. Faced with spending 20 years in prison, the remaining shinobi clans surrendered half of their wealth. That did not mean that the Konoha Mercantile Guild had came out of this unscathed either. Most of Asuna Haruno's assets were liquidated, and upon discovering that she had a hand in the corruption that festered around the Leaf, she was ordered to surrender 75% of her assets. Asuna was all but furious. The Mercantile Guild's lifeblood was that of being a shinobi village. With that gone, the Konoha Mercantile Guild was finished. Even more insulting was that the Flame Village's Hokage had signed a trade agreement with the Pakera Merchant House. The trade agreement, as she found out, made the Pakera Merchant House the main guild in the village. And the village got much needed products much cheaper than what Asuna had originally sold them for. The Haruno family had ran the guild since the village's founding, and now, with Konoha no longer a ninja village, the Konoha Mercantile Guild, as Asuna knew, was finished. When Danzo personally visited the fire daimyo demanding an explanation, the daimyo gave him the reason why. Konoha had become too corrupt and the Fire Lord had been working on a brand new village to replace Konoha. Tochigakure no Sato, or Fire Village. Danzo then found himself stripped of his title of Hokage, where it was later bestowed upon the new Fire Shadow of Fire Village. Now, Danzo was just a nobody from a village that had all but dug its own grave. The root commander was all but furious. He had spent decades in loyal service to the Leaf, only to have it ripped out from underneath him. So what if some people had gotten hurt or were in his way? What he had done was all for Konoha. Upon returning to Konoha, he had sent his entire root Anbu to his underground headquarters. Then, he made long-term plans. Plans which include the destruction of the upstart ninja village and the assassination of the Fire Lord. Once those two were out the way, he would declare war on the one person who was the bane of his existence. Naruto Uzumaki. All roads led to him. Konoha's downfall had begun with him. Following orchestrating his banishment, he had resurfaced as the most powerful man on the Western continent. As Danzo watched as his world crumbled all around him, he made a solemn vow. That vow was to wipe the demon Emperor from this plane of existence. It was early in the morning and the Empress consort of the unified West was awake. Hinata Namakazi was lying on her side, her head propped up in her hand as she watched her husband sleep. The former Hyuga heiress was dressed in one of her husband's old white shirts which she used as a nightgown, the shirt buttoned halfway revealing a generous amount of cleavage, and ending several inches above her knees. Her husband was from the waist up, on his back, still asleep. In the 2 years they had been married, they had gone through some serious trials and tribulations, both in their personal and private lives. They had their arguments, and even in some cases, had to put the United West's best interests over their own. But unlike Konoha, Naruto and Hinata held the reins of power. The most recent argument they had was over the Konoha refugees, mainly the branch Hyuga. Hinata had remained silent during the meeting with the deposed clans, but seeing Neji after 2 years, she almost lost her head. Then her husband had told him that he would remove the seal should the Hyuga prove their worth. Hinata wanted nothing to do with her former clan, especially the branch clan, given how they had treated her when she was subjected to the caged bird seal. Her original intention was to leave it on their heads as to show them who the boss was, but Naruto said something to her that made her reconsider. You do that, Hinata, you're no better than him. Hinata relented, knowing full well that he was talking about her father. That was the one thing she feared the most, becoming like him, cold and emotionless. That was something that Naruto had remedied almost immediately. You're nothing like him, Hinata, he had told her. You are better than him. That has already been proven in your deeds and your actions here as Empress and as my wife. Hinata knew that he was right. She felt ashamed as to how she had thought in regards to her former clan members. Given the choice of fleeing an oppressive clan and regime, she would have left with them as well. But she sensed an ulterior motive in Neji leading the cadet branch to the imperial capital. But even she had to admit that Naruto made the right choice in keeping the clans here for their probationary period, both to keep a close watch on them and to see if they were really worthy of redemption. Something on you mind, Hinata? Naruto asked, eyes closed. How long were you awake? Was the question. A while, came the reply. The Emperor opened his eyes and was soon mimicking Hinata's position on the bed. So what's bothering you? Just thinking about several things, she replied. You have any regrets? About not making Hokage? Some, he admitted. I wanted to prove to Konoha that even the dead last can be Hokage. But after I was banished, I had to face some hard truths. Konoha would never accept me as Hokage, even if they knew who my father was. So I guess the whole banishment was a blessing in disguise. It pretty much forced me to grow up. But now, I have no regrets. And what about me? I'm still pissed that I chased after the Banshee instead of courting you. I would have done it in secret as well. I can almost imagine Hiyashi's expression if he found out that I was Minato's kid. Almost made me wish I was there when Shikamaru and the others told the council who I was. Hinata smiled. She could almost see the look on the council's face when they found out that the so-called Kyuubi brat was the most powerful man in the unified West. But despite how things had went down, I have no regrets, Naruto continued. Sure, we have our arguments and fights like any other couple. In some cases, you are right, and in others, I'm the one who's right, but in the end, we're still together. What about you? Hinata scooted over closer. If I wasn't as shy and as confident as I was now, I would have done more than just stalked you during our days as genin. But now, despite everything, I'm happy. While they kissed, Hinata's mind raced back to the previous day, where she had gone for a routine physical down at the hospital in the imperial capital. Even the most powerful woman in the unified West needed to make sure that she was in prime fighting form. Ino had done Hinata's blood work, since Tsunade still gets squeamish at the sight of blood. She had been ill for the past several mornings and her period was late, but this had all but verified her suspicions. She was pregnant. Pregnant with Naruto's child. Naruto has an heir to the throne. Well, now would be as a perfect time as any to tell him. You look better, Naruto whispered as one hand rubbed the small of her back. So what did Granny have to say? Hinata bit her bottom lip. You're going to be a daddy, Naruto. Naruto blinked. Then his eyes went wide. Excuse me, what? I'm pregnant. Town of Konoha, Fire Country, 1 year after its liquidation. 1 year had passed since Konoha's termination as a ninja village. Since then, the disgraced Leaf was a shadow of its former glory. Home to over 100 clans, it now only had 3, one of which was the Hyuga. Following the liquidation of the Konoha Mercantile Guild, Asuna had fallen into madness upon losing her fortune. Upon her suicide by cyanide pill, Danzo had initiated Sakura Haruno into the root Anbu and seized what remained of her fortune. For the past 3 years Danzo had plotted and prepared. His root Anbu now consisted of all remaining ninja who were stripped of their titles. Over 400 ninja who remained behind when Tsunade led the Konoha Exodus, which Danzo had initiated into his root Anbu. Add 200 remnants from what used to be the Sound and numerous missing ninja, and his numbers swelled to over 500. Speaking of Danzo, the aforementioned Warhawk was in his underground route headquarters. Flanked by Sai and a second root ninja, the old man strode down the hall with a purpose. After over a year of planning, he was preparing to destroy Tochigakure with his forces. The last member that he was planning to release from his private prison cell. This man has been here for the past 9 years, having been captured when he became a missing ninja, having originally defected to Orochimaru but was captured shortly thereafter when his ex-lover betrayed him. 2 more root Anbu guarded the cell door. Danzo nodded and one of them unlocked the door and opened it. Inside, seated on the cot, with a special variant of the cursed seal on his forearm, and having gained several pounds of muscle on his frame, was a white-haired man. So, the big man himself decided to come and visit little old me. The imprisoned man began. To what I owe the honor of your visit, Shimura. Last time I checked, you were no longer the Hokage and this pathetic village was no longer a shinobi village. Be careful who you insult, Mizuki. Otherwise, you will not see the light of day, Danzo warned. I could have you executed if I did not have a use for you. This caught the disgraced ninja's attention. Color me intrigued. Go on. It will take some time, but soon, I will have over 1,000 ninja ready to destroy the flame, and to kill the Fire Lord. Once the flame village is destroyed and its remaining ninja join my ranks, I will declare war on the unified West. I will wipe out Spring Country and assimilate their shinobi forces. Then I will do the same to Mist. Once I finish off Suna and their demon of a cage, I will invade the United West and destroy their demon emperor and anyone who gets in my way. So you plan on making war with that runt? What's in it for me? Mizuki asked. The head of Naruto Uzumaki, the emperor himself once we invade the unified West, Danzo replied. Once he is dead and any offspring he had with that whore of a Hyuga, the world will be under the banner of the leaf. I will usher in a new golden age. I will succeed in making Konoha the strongest of the villages. Now that caught Mizuki's attention. He had a bone to pick with him ever since the failed attempt to steal the Forbidden Scroll. Those words were music to his ears. Okay, I'm listening. Hinata's Diary. Entry 1. 2 long years. 2 years had passed since Konoha was stripped of their hidden village status. Since then, life has moved on here in the West. Naruto and I had celebrated our 4th wedding anniversary, as well as the birthday of our child. Wait a sec. I should start from the beginning. After the destruction of the Oto Kumo Iwa alliance, the surviving members of the Lightning Daimyo's family returned with a small army and purged the remaining traitorous ninja from their ranks, and re-established their rule in Lightning Country. It was once we received word of Konoha's liquidation from the Fire Daimyo, that I dropped the bomb on Naruto. I had gone for my routine physical and Tsunade, having been appointed as our private physician, had sent Ino to give me the news. I was pregnant. Naruto was ecstatic. It was almost as if he was a Konoha genin once again. He even leapt to the roof of the imperial palace and screamed the news to the capital. The guards, A and Katami looked on, amused at my husband's antics. Then we broke the news of my pregnancy at the meeting of the Imperial Council. The council was shocked, to say the least. The Namakazi dynasty finally had an heir to the throne. Then a literal fist fight had broken out following the declaration, over who would be the godparents of our child, until Naruto called for it to stop and announced that the godmother was Yukie, the Spring Daimyo having long since called dibs on being the godmother. Then a second fight broke out over who was to be the godparents of our second child. Honestly, they aren't usually like this, Naruto whispered to me. I just stood there, shaking my head. As it turns out, I was not alone in my pregnancy. While we were going through the files of the Konoha ninja and working out their assignments, Naruto found a marriage certificate with Neji and Tenten's names on it, as well as a blood test, confirming Tenten's pregnancy. Now I see why Neji decided to come here along with the rest of the branch clan. He wanted a better life for his child, a bird free from its cage. Tenten was about 5 weeks along, meaning that she would have her child before mine. It was also because of this, I also reconciled with Neji. As expected, her son was born a month before mine. Neji named him after his father, Hizashi. Then our child was born. I think I shattered my poor husband's hand when I squeezed it too tight. Our firstborn was a son. We named him after Naruto's father. Minato Uzumaki Namakazi. The unified West, from the Laja Mountains to the Tears, Point rejoiced in celebration. Yukie was giddy with delight, as she now had a godson to spoil. Following our son's birth, Naruto stayed in the capital for the first 3 months. The Jinchuriki had received word of Minato's birth and had come to pay their respects. Even Roshi and Utakata, who made his home in the southern region, came to visit. I can see it now, Naruto said to me as Yugito cradled Minato while Roshi and Han looked on in delight. 6 Jinchuriki, 5 uncles and 1 aunt. That's not counting Yukie, Katami and the council. He is going to be spoiled rotten. Guess it's up to us to make sure he's raised right, I replied. After all, he is the heir. When Minato was 4.5 months old, the probation period was over for the Konoha refugees. Once the probation period was over, Naruto and I had looked over their files and checked on their exploits. After talking it over, we decided to grant the Konoha family's clan status and the Chunin and Junin citizenship. For Neji and the cadet branch of the Hyuga, Naruto was true to his word. Not only did he granted the Hyuga clan status with Neji as the clan head, but he also stripped them both of the cadet branch label and of the caged bird seal. With the downfall of the Hyuga clan back in Konoha, Neji is now head of the new Hyuga clan here in Kimen. Aside from that, Naruto had also made peace with his former sensei, Kakashi. I always thought that both him and Anko would hook up. Instead, she is seeing Zabuza. Not that Hitaki is alone. His girlfriend, a civilian member of the Pakara merchant house, just so happens to be a fan of Jiraiya's Ika Ika series. Who knew? Kimen City, during the Unification Festival. It was a known fact that if you were in the United West during the week-long Unification Festival, then you were in for one hell of a party. Such as the one in the imperial capital. At the end of the Unification Week, a party in the market square would take place. Everyone was invited. Even the clans and the Emperor himself would attend along with his wife. Tamari was nice enough to give the Suna garrison time off to attend. Even Gaara, who was visiting the imperial capital on an inspection of the Suna consulate, attended. He was not alone, as he came with a companion. A Suna Junin named Matsuri. Of course, aside from the incident in which Gaara tried to use the sand waterfall funeral on Shikamaru when he caught him in Temari's bed, Tamari had stopped him from crushing Shikamaru. Thankfully, things were pretty much routine in the unified West. Several of the elder Western Hyuga members were babysitting baby Minato, baby Hizashi and several other Hyuga newborns as their parents enjoyed themselves. Maru Sarutobi was chatting with a local girl, a ninja who worked as one of the guards at the Imperial Complex. Zabuza and Ibiki were in the middle of an arm wrestling competition. Yukie Fujika's, now pregnant with her first child, and her husband Bodyguard, a special Junin from Spring Village who she had met on the set of her last film, made an appearance. All in all, everyone was having a blast. Naruto and Hinata Namakazi had finally gotten to several chairs and sat down, having danced most of the night away, laughing, acting like a normal couple rather than the leaders of the unified West. Have I ever told you the story about the first anniversary festival when Zabuza got drunk and tried to hit on Sana? Naruto asked. The one where Sanshi chased after him with his family swords screaming bloody murder. About a dozen times, Hinata replied. Have I ever told you that I'm pregnant? Naruto shrugged his shoulders. Once, he replied. Hinata grinned and held up 2 fingers. Better make that twice, love. It then dawned on what Naruto was saying. Hinata was pregnant. Again. Naruto's journal. Entry 1. I'm a father. Again. This time, it's a girl. Hinata and I named her Mocha Kushina Namakazi. Come to think about it, Yukie's son was born several days after our son, the Spring Daimyo, having married a ninja from Spring Village while he was working as her bodyguard. We joked that her son and our daughter could marry once they get older. While Minato becomes the emperor, Mocha would be the next Spring Daimyo. Wishful thinking. As expected, when we announced Hinata's second pregnancy following the Unification Festival, another fight had broken out between the Imperial Council over the rights of being the kid's godparents. You think that you could at least show some sort of maturity over something like this? Sigh. Once Hinata was released from the hospital, we decided that 2 children would be more than enough. Good thing that Ino had started Hinata on some birth control. Minato will be the heir to my throne, and Yukie's been talking about a marriage agreement between her son and Mocha. Hinata and I talked about it and we came to a conclusion. When the kids grow older, we'll let them decide. Entry 2. Minato's 3 years old today. I swear, that kid grows like a weed. Right now, Mocha is with her godparents. Hinata had convinced me to let Asuma and Kurenai Sarutobi act as her godmother, while I chose Maru Sarutobi, Moegi and Udon as her uncles and aunt, respectively. But that's not the most important thing that I'm writing about, surprisingly. I've been getting more and more reports from Daimyo Todo about a well-organized group of bandits originating from the Laja region. Han has his hands tied with a second squad of highwaymen, so I sent Jiraiya and Tsunade to bust some heads and take down the bandits. When they returned from their mission several days later, I was in for a shock. I know for a fact that both Granny and Pervy Sage are in their 60s, but now, they look 30 years younger. It wasn't a henge either, as Hinata had verified it. It was at that moment, they both gave me the story. They had tracked down the highwaymen to their mountain stronghold and proceeded to wreck shop on the muscle. Once the bandits were all dead, they found a bottle of what they thought was sake, along with his journals. Deciding to celebrate on a job well done, they both split the fake sake. It was when they were halfway back with the scrolls containing the stolen goods and money, that they finally read the journal. Aside the fact that the bandits were a sleeper cell of Oda remnants, the sake they thought they had drunk was in fact something that they had been working on in collaboration with the Jashin cult that I had eradicated in my Unification war. An de-aging elixir for Rokubangi Oda. Come to think about it, he was about Danzu's age when Yugito and I killed him. The elixir was the only one, as the ingredients and how to make the elixir was left to his memory, meaning that the know-how to make the elixir died with him when Tsunade knocked his head off. De-aged 30 years, back in their prime when they were once teammates with the snake. God help us all as to what kind of mayhem those two can cause. Entry 3. I was right about there being other Uzumaki other than myself and Yahiko. It was shortly after Minato's birthday that they started to come into the city. Bu the end of the week, over 200 members of the Uzumaki clan were in Kimen City. Refugees that had scattered following the war which had all but leveled Whirlpool Village. With Yahiko as clan head, but answering to me, of course I allowed them to establish a new village in the unified West, with Yahiko himself as the head of the village. Of course, that meant that both him and Yahiko would have to step down as members of the elite guard. They would still be on as reserve members, but anyone who is an active member has to reside in Kimen City. Where Yahiko was planning to resurrect Whirlpool was in the southernmost part of the northern region. Conan loved the southern part of the country and Yahiko decided that moving south would be good for the clan. I gave them my blessings and allowed them to leave the guards. Of course, that meant that I had to fill in 2 spaces, now that Yahiko and Conan are gone. At Hinata's suggestion, she nominated Neji Hyuga and Sasuke Uchiha for the job. I had my concerns, but in the end, I decided to allow them to join up. If Sasuke is sincere about him seeking redemption, then serving as part of my guard will give him the chance he deserves. If he tries to stab me in the back, then the Uchiha line will be extinct. Entry 4. Jiraiya's spy network in the east has sent in a communique in regards to the former Leaf Village. It's clear that Danzo is planning something big. Remnants of Orochimaru's sound forces that had narrowly avoided being killed when the Oto Kumo Iwa alliance had self-destructed avenue resurfaced and missing ninja originally in the Konoha bingo book have been seen in and around Konoha. You think that the Warhawk would get the hint and just lie down and die. But after my spies in Konoha, acting as monks on a journey to the reconstructed fire temple, managed to get some more information from several documents and, interrogating, a suspicious root Anbu that was trailing them, were my concerns verified. After all, no one would suspect a holy man from a backwoods country on a pilgrimage of being a spy. Danzo is planning on initiating a fourth shinobi war. First, by invading neighboring countries and forcibly adding conquered ninja to their ranks, until they are large enough to launch an invasion of the unified West. If that happens, there will be a major loss of life, mostly from my end. This, I cannot allow. I thought that once Konoha was stripped of its hidden village status, that the village would more than likely self-destruct. Guess I was wrong this time. Danzo will not stop until I am gone. So now, I must prepare for Konoha's destruction, and my ultimate victory. Kumo and Iwa have some beef with Danzo back when he was an active ninja. So I will use that to my advantage. I will be heading back east for an inspection tour of the Pakera houses, so I will have a meeting with the leaders of Kumo, Iwa, and their respective daimyos. If I want to go to war against Danzo, then it will benefit me to have some insurance. Trading outpost, near the lightning border. To call it a trading outpost would be an understatement. It was, in fact, a thriving town in neutral territory. The unified West, and the daimyos of the countries which housed the most powerful of the shinobi villages had signed a non-aggression pact, which allowed the outpost to conduct its business unmolested. It was also one of the few places in which ninja from rival villages could visit and a bloodbath would not ensue. The trading organizations which served the East and the United West's Pakera Merchant House were the chief members of the trading consortium. At the moment, Emperor Namakazi of the United West, along with the Tsuchikage of Iowa, Kuretsuchi and the new Raikage, a veteran by the name of Rokuro Kinoshita. Kinoshita was by far the oldest of the rulers, and Naruto remembered him as the one who had been sent to Suna when Kumo demanded his wife. The designated rulers were inside a meeting room, while their bodyguards waited outside. Naruto sat at the head of the table, while the Lightning and Kumo envoy sat on the right side of the table, the Earth and Iwa envoy sat on his left. Here we are, Naruto began, the unified West. Earth and Iwa. Lightning and Kumo. I wouldn't have asked you four to come here if it wasn't important. So let's get to the brass tacks and dispense with the bull, Kinoshita barked. He did not forget the disrespect that this young upstart had given to him when he and his envoy had came to him back in Suna, but he did respect the son of Minato Namakazi for being the one who destroyed the Akatsuki, a feat that not even he himself could have done in his prime. But the Lightning Daimyo had made it clear that Naruto's wife was off limits. If Naruto could destroy the Akatsuki, then he could just as easily do the same with them. As you wish, Naruto replied. I am here because we each have a problem, Konoha. Kinoshita scoffed. Your former village. The Fire Lord stripped it of its hidden village status. Why should we be worried about them? Maybe to you, but not to the stone. Every time their root shows up, Kumo fights them back to their borders. Konoha's power may have been stripped, but that does not make them any less dangerous, Naruto replied as he steepled his hands. Even a cornered animal is most dangerous because it has nothing else to lose. That very much is true, Kuretsuchi said. We've also had skirmishes with Shimura's root Anbu on our border for the past year and a half. You are lucky that you have not been affected. Oh, but I have, Naruto replied. In the past 3 months, I had to provide armed escorts to the Pakera caravans traveling through Fire Country. I had to order the merchants to give them a wide berth in the area surrounding Konoha. Jiraiya's spy network has been reporting that Oto remnants, as well as a sizable number of missing ninja from several villages, including those from Kumo and Iwa, are gathering in Konoha. So Shimura is gathering an army under the Fire Lord's nose, the Lightning Daimyo said, concerned. It was her fire counterpart which had offered her and her family asylum when her husband was murdered by the Odo-backed regime. For that act of kindness from the Fire Lord, she and her family would be eternally grateful. Does this mean that Konoha is planning for war? Naruto nodded. Yes. I fear that with Konoha losing its status as a shinobi village, Danzo has completely lost it. But he wasn't all there to begin with. He retrieved several documents from a scroll and passed them to the two sides. My allies in Suna were chasing down a missing nin when they came across a hidden base in what used to be Sound Country. I just received those documents shortly before leaving my home for here. Turns out that Orochimaru and Danzo were working together. The plan was for Danzo to use his root Anbu to assassinate both the Godime Hokage and the Shinobi Council, then sue for peace with Orochimaru. Once the alliance between Orochimaru and Danzo was cemented, they would then assassinate the Cages of Stone and Lightning and combine their forces into one massive army. They were both planning on starting another shinobi war, Kinoshita said as he read the incriminating documents. Unknown to the two ninjas and the daimyos, the documents were doctored fakes. Katami herself had designed them using her own genjutsu to make them look like correspondence between the snake and the warhawk, making it look like the real thing. The blood and the motive, here in writing. If this was signed in snake venom, I would not be surprised. Naruto nodded. First by invading Wave, then Water Country and subjugating its ninja forces. The same thing would follow in Suna. Waterfall, until they would turn their sights to the unified West. My home. Kuretsuchi set the documents on the table. What are you proposing? She asked. Danzo is planning to finish what Orochimaru has started, Naruto continued. If he wages war here, he will destabilize the region. Not only will your respective countries and shinobi villages will be threatened, but once his forces are big enough, he will invade the unified West, and destabilize the region that I've worked so hard to bring peace to. What I'm proposing is simple. We invade and crush Konoha once and for all. We destroy Shimura and his army and burn the village to the ground. An enticing offer, Kinoshita said. But what do we benefit in teaming up with you? Last time I checked, the Hyuga are still in Konoha, Naruto replied. All of them main branch. Including Hanabi Hyuga. Kinoshita immediately caught on as to what Naruto was suggesting. After whispering an exchange with the Lightning Daimyo, Kinoshita came to a decision. Kumogakur no Sato will commit but only if we can obtain the Bikagen. So long as it's not my wife or the Western Hyuga, I don't care what you do. Are we in agreement? Kinoshita nodded. The Daimyo of Lightning Country agrees to your terms. You have Kumogakur no Sato in your corner. And what does Iwa get in return in exchange for this triple alliance? Kuretsuchi asked. The heads of all of the missing ninja will bring in a nice bounty for Iwa, Naruto said. All of the missing ninja are A rank and higher, and will earn Iwa some serious coin. This time around, a two-person conference was between the Tsuchikage and the Earth Daimyo. After a moment, they came to an agreement. Okay, Lord Namakazi, you got yourself a deal. But, what do you get out of this? Kinoshita asked. You're handing over the Hyuga to us and the missing nin to Iwa on silver platters. How do we know that you won't try the same thing that Danzo is planning on doing? You have a military alliance with Suna, and we have seen a fraction of the United West's strength when you along with Gaara crushed the Akatsuki. You can just as easily roll over the elemental countries and absorb them into your empire. If I was a bloodthirsty tyrant, I would have done it already, Naruto replied. But I have no intention of invading the East. Gaara and Suna have a military and trading alliance with the unified West, not to mention that Gaara is a close friend of mine from when I was a genin. The people of Wave showed kindness to me, Daimyo Fujikas is the godmother to my eldest son, and Zabuza still has connections in Mist. I am very content with what I have back west. To answer your question about what do I get out of it, the satisfaction of seeing Konoha burn to the ground. Payback for 12 years worth of hell. The daimyos of Earth and Lightning, as well as the two cages, knew of Naruto's background as the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. It was a miracle in itself that Naruto had not unleashed hell upon the leaf for all of the trauma they had put him through. If anything, they respected Naruto a lot more. Not because that he was a wise ruler, but the fact that they were still alive because he showed no interest of invading. Naruto's Journal. Entry 5. With the forces of stone and lightning in my corner, I had to sell my idea to the fire daimyo. He was easy to convince, once I laid out all of my evidence of Danzo's motives. He agreed that Konoha was a threat and gave me the authorization to invade and destroy Konoha, as well as the authorization for Danzo's termination. Returning to Kimen City by way of the Demon's Gate, I called for a meeting of the council, and told them of my intentions. They all agreed that Danzo was a threat, and that he had to be eliminated. So I activated the Demon Brigade and the Hellcats, as well as a sizable number of ninja and samurai to even the playing field. I even brought in Conan and Yahiko for the fun. Even Kakashi, Rock Lee, Maida Guy, Jiraiya and Tsunade volunteered. Katami also decided to come, since I promised her that she could burn the village to the ground. Hinata wanted to come, but I refused. She may be the Empress, but she was also a mother. I could not let our children grow up as orphans. Grudgingly, Hinata had agreed to remain behind. I used the Demon's Gate to transport myself, the elite guards, Katami, the demon unit and the Hellcats to the trading post, and waited for Kumo and Iwa to show up. Kumo, since they were the closest, arrived shortly after I did, while Iwa arrived 2 days later. Our combined forces were about 600 to Danzo's 1500 ninja. But as always, I have a plan. Gotta close out now. It's time. Entry 6. The battle is over. Konohagakure is in our hands. The majority of the root Anbu have been decimated. Only a small pocket of resistance remains as Zabuza and Yugito invade the underground headquarters where Danzo has holed up. One advantage I have over Danzo is despite being decades younger, I have experience in fighting wars. Despite our triple alliance, we were still outnumbered 3 to -1. But I quickly negated those numbers with the use of exploding clones, which decimated the majority of Danzo's forces. Then I used another batch of exploding clones to destroy the gates and we came charging in. I made my intentions clear as I saw Danzo with his lapdog Sai. Danzo. The Kyuubi brat has returned. I bring the destruction of Konoha. With those words, the invasion of Konoha has begun. The root Anbu were the major threat, as was Mizuki. Danzo sent him after me, along with Sakura. I had activated the Fox Eye and used it to cut down the Anbu with Rasenshurikens and exploding cage bushins. With Kakashi and Sasuke backing me up, we unleashed hell until we caught up with Mizuki and Sakura. I guess one can say that it was a reunion of sorts, Cell 7 back together again. Only this time, I was leading the assault with Hatake and the Uchiha backing me up, and Sakura, now a member of Root, and Mizuki leading the defense of Konoha. I sent Sasuke and Hatake to catch up with the Banshee, while I dealt with Mizuki. This white-haired freak was responsible for several murders of Pakara merchants and imperial civilians who were on their way to Waven Spring. Regrettably, one of those murders was that of Meiki Asahina. It was time for Mizuki to answer for his crimes. The battle had taken place in training ground number 44, the Forest of Death. As expected, the hungry critters roamed the area, watching as our battle had taken place. Mizuki was a master of jutsu that kept me on my toes, as well as having a modified cursed seal which transformed him into a bipedal, tiger-like form, giving him a boost in strength and agility. The battle between myself and Mizuki raged from the Forest of Death, the animals not daring to interfere, as they wanted to see which one of us will fall before moving in. I knew that Mizuki would not fall for the same trick twice when I kicked his the first time. As I've said before, I still live up to the title of being unpredictable, and that I still have some tricks of my own that I have not revealed. Mizuki was complacent in his superiority, thinking that he had the upper hand. But after I used the Hiroshin to get behind him, I flung 2 Rasenshuriken at him. Mizuki turned around, assuming that the attacks did nothing to harm him, until I told him those 4 magic words. You are already dead. At that, Mizuki fell to the ground in several bloody pieces. I turned from the sight and left the area, just as the oversized critters moved in for the feast. Turns out that there was a witness in that battle. Sakura had given Kakashi and Sasuke the slip and was preparing to attack me from behind with her katana. That was when I heard the familiar sound of birds chirping, followed by Sakura's scream. I spun around, and saw Sasuke pulling his hand back, having executed the Chidori on Sakura. The assassination jutsu had obliterated her lung and damaged her heart. I'm sorry it had to be this way, Sakura, Sasuke had said with genuine regret as Sakura turned to face him. I could pretty much bet that she was looking at her one-time crush with a combination of betrayal and disbelief before falling over. I learned that Sakura had injured Kakashi, and that he was out of the fight. Sasuke had barely managed to stop Sakura from getting the jump on me. Looks like the Uchiha was sincere about his redemption after all. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Aside from Kakashi, Asuma Sarutobi and Maida Guy was also out of action, due to injury. But they would both survive. Asuma, however, would not be an active ninja again, due to the severity of his own injuries. Tragically, the Raikage, Rokuro Kinoshita was killed in action, as were ninja from my forces, Iwa and Kumo. With the majority of the root dead and the Oto Rimanats crushed, the surviving missing ninja decided that it would be best that they surrender. Iwa got what they wanted, the remaining missing ninja were restrained and taken out of Konoha. With their objective complete, Iwa withdrew from the field. As for Kumo, something unexpected. Hiyashi Hyuga and the Hyuga Council were found slaughtered inside the Hyuga compound. As it turned out, Hanabi was against her father's wishes to continue the fight when it became evident that Konoha was finished. Which led to Hanabi seizing control of the Hyuga from her crippled father and the council. Once she had killed Hiyashi and the elders, the other main branch Hyuga had no problem in seeing that Hanabi was in charge. When the Kumo ninja invaded the Hyuga compound, they were surprised to see that Hanabi was now clan head. Seeing that fighting off Kumo would be futile, Hanabi had decided to surrender the Hyuga to Kumo. For the duration of the invasion, the Hyuga would be under heavy guard. Once the battle was over, the majority of them were executed, and Hanabi and 10 Hyuga, most of them female, were taken back to Kumo. With the remaining Hyuga in their possession, Kumo returned home. As for myself, I received word from Haku. Danzo has been captured, the last of his root now dead. With Danzo in custody, the invasion is officially over. Since this town is doomed anyway, I ordered it to be stripped of any useful items from cash to jutsu, of which plenty was left behind. The Konoha hospital was transformed into a triage center as Tsunade, Ino, Shizune and the Yamada clan treated the injured. Once the injured were safely back home, I sent the Imperial forces back to Kimen, leaving only myself, Zabuza, Yugito, Katami, Jiraiya and Tsunade. Once the village was cleared of people, I moved out to a hillside area about 10 miles out, where I had an excellent view of Konoha. I want Danzo to see the destruction of his beloved village before I execute him for crimes against the unified West. Outskirts of Konoha, Fire Country, night. Katami, Zabuza and Yugito emerged from the village, bloodied and bruised, but alive. The Root Anbu had made their final stand inside the underground headquarters, but they were no match for the battle-hardened Imperial forces, Sai being the last to fall. With them, his Sharingan ripped from his skull and his arm containing the 10 Sharingan ripped from his body, the wound cauterized so that he would not bleed to death, was Danzo Shimura. Naruto had set up a forward operations base 10 miles out from Konoha. The temporary base was set upon a hill with an excellent view of the village. Minutes later, the last surviving member of Konoha was at Naruto's feet. The victorious emperor looked down on his defeated foe, his expression grim. "You couldn't just leave me in peace, Shimura," Naruto snapped. "You tried to initiate a shinobi war out of pure spite. Now look at you. Your army is destroyed. Kumo has the Hyuga and Iwa has your missing ninja. My forces have wiped out what remained of your root. You are the last one." In the face of his demise, Danzo was defiant. "You little brat. You don't deserve to be the Emperor of the West. That title should have been mine. Your armies should have been mine. I would have conquered the East and brought it under the control of the Leaf." That earned him a kick to the head from Naruto, causing the crippled Warhawk to fall over. "I was hoping that you would be begging for your miserable life," the Emperor replied as Zabuza hauled him upright. "You are the last one alive, Shimura. Don't think I've forgotten that you were the mastermind behind my banishment. All of this, from what had happened when I was kicked out to this very moment, it is your mess. Your responsibility. In trying to make Konoha stronger, you sealed its fate. I should have killed you myself when I had the chance." Danzo snarled. "Sachirobe should not have let you live." "Shame," Naruto replied. "Sarutobi respected you once upon a time. But you got arrogant. You tried to make me into a weapon. When Sarutobi blocked you, you had me banished. But life goes on. I will return home to Kimen City, where my wife and my children are waiting for me. You will not live to see the end of this day. In war, there are winners and losers. I'm cashing you out, Danzo. But the last thing you will see will be the Nine Tails destroying Konoha once and for all." Turning to Katami, he simply said, "Do it." Giving Naruto a feral grin, Katami vanished in a geyser of flame. Zabuza turned Danzo around to face Konoha, while Yugito tapped a pressure point on the back of his neck. The pressure point worked on his eye, keeping it open despite Danzo's feeble attempts to close it. Katami then reappeared. Now in her fox form, which was bigger than the destroyed Hokage monument, Katami began to finish what she had started over 2 decades ago, decimating all in her path. As the former shinobi village was awash in a sea of flames, Naruto, his elite guards, Tsunade, Jiraiya, Yugito and Zabuza watched as the Kyuubi no Kitsune let out a roar and with one massive swing of her tails, decimated what was the Hokage mountain. Danzo watched, unable to turn away. The defeated Warhawk could not help but to feel sadness as he watched the Kyuubi no Kitsune raise what was once the strongest of the shinobi villages. Then he heard Naruto whisper into his ear. "By the way, I lied to Kumo and Iwa to get them on my side by saying you worked with Orochimaru. Take that to your grave." Before Danzo could say, "What?" Naruto had moved out of the way and Zabuza stepped forward, oversized sword in one hand. With one swing, the last of Konoha's ninja was dead, his head liberated from his body. "Leave Danzo's body here," Naruto ordered as Danzo's corpse fell over. "Let the critters of the forest have him for dinner." Once Katami returned to them in her human form, Konoha was in flames, its gates and village walls having been torn down by her tails, the mountain leveled and collapsed into a giant heap. The fires of Konoha were seen for miles, and would burn all night. Come morning, what used to be Konohagakure no Sato, once the strongest of the shinobi villages until its own arrogance proved to be its downfall, was a smoking crater. People would come to avoid the ruins, saying that they were cursed. Even the animals who used to live there had moved on to other parts of Fire Country. His job finished, Naruto summoned the Demon's Gate and in a flash, were back in Kimen City. He dismissed the guards, Katami, Zabuza, Yugito and the 2 sages and returned to the Imperial Palace, where Hinata and their 2 children were waiting for him. With Konoha destroyed and Danzo finally dead, he could breathe a lot easier, and look to the future. The Namakazi dynasty would continue to rule the unified West for many generations. Like the founder of the dynasty, Naruto Uzumaki Namakazi and his wife, Hinata Namakazi, the emperors and their wives governed the people with a fair and just hand, refusing to surrender to the vices that had claimed so many other rulers. The values passed on from parent to child, selflessness, compassion, honor, guided the Namakazi dynasty through countless trials, tragedies and triumphs. Naruto Namakazi, banished from his original home, and have risen to prominence, first as a warlord, then the ruler, would rule as emperor for 25 years alongside his wife before they decided to step down from their place as emperor and empress of the United West. Minato Namakazi and his wife, Makoto Namakazi, formerly Asuna Junin, to take the throne as the second emperor and empress consort of the unified West. Like his father, Minato would show that he had been trained well. He would rule the unified West under a fair and just hand, being a lover of truth and justice. Despite not being in line for the throne, Moka Namakazi became the daimyo of Spring Country. A talented healer and fighter, Moka was named the fourth fox sage by her mother and Katami Akashiya. Seeing as how she had a talent for acting and singing, Koyuki Kazuhana, known by her stage name of Yukie Fujikas, had taken Moka under her tutelage. By the time her elder brother had ascended the throne, Moka Namakazi Kazuhana, having married Yukie's son Rajan Kazuhana, was not only an accomplished warrior, entertainer and healer, but she would go on to rule Spring Country as its daimyo. Rajan would command Spring Village as its cage. Naruto and Hinata Namakazi would become known as father and mother of the empire, a title bestowed upon them in Naruto's 16th year as emperor of the unified West. It was also in this year that the emperor and empress consort would face their greatest challenge yet. An army of missing nin from the east, led by Hanabi Hyuga. During the imperial Kumo Iwa invasion of Konoha, Hanabi Hyuga, who was the sister to the empress consort, opted to surrender to Kumo, but not before assassinating her father, clan head Hiyashi Hyuga and the Council of Elders. Hanabi had worked her way up the ranks by either seducing or assassinating the competition. Now, with an army of missing ninja under her command, she made her intentions clear. Her motives were based solely on revenge. During this time, the emperor had allowed the Uzumaki clan that had been revived under his banner to return to Whirlpool Country to re-establish both the country and its shinobi village. Led by Godime Uzukage Yahiko Uzumaki, Whirlpool Country was under the jurisdiction of the unified West. Hanabi decided to target that while at the same time, attempt to kidnap Minato and Moka while the pair were attending a tournament in Tea Country. The kidnapping failed, and the emperor and empress consort personally intervened. The imperial defense forces took to the field in Whirlpool Country. Hinata had slain her former sister, and the imperial forces under the command of Naruto and Minato Namakazi decimated the army of missing nins. With the ascension of Minato Namakazi, the exploits of his father and mother became legend. Naruto and Hinata Namakazi would go on to leave a series of instructions to their successors on how to rule. These instructions were mandatory reading for all heirs to the throne. What was said is now lost to history, but for all purposes, the advice was followed. The Namakazi dynasty would rule until the end of the shinobi age. No one knows the whereabouts of their descendants, but one thing is for certain. Their exploits will not be forgotten, as they are recorded in the annals of history. Their descendants have not died out, as they are still alive to this very day, unaware of the legacy that they contain. But as with all legends and tales, it is just waiting to be discovered. Epilogue. Version B. The Namakazi dynasty would rule until the end of the shinobi age. No one knows the whereabouts of their descendants, but one thing is for certain. Their exploits will not be forgotten, as they are recorded in the annals of history. The speaker was a woman in her late 20s, early 30s. Her audience was an archaeology class in Tokyo University. The woman was very voluptuous, her figure showing from her business suit and skirt combination, the pair of black heels on her feet. Short dark hair framed her face, the bangs covering one eye, a la Rosemary's MGS4 hairdo. Her uncovered lavender eye with pupil scanned the captivated audience. Their descendants have not died out, as they are still alive to this very day, unaware of the legacy that they contain. But as with all legends and tales, it is just waiting to be discovered, she said as she closed the book from which she was reading from. One of her students raised her hand. The professor acknowledged it with a nod. Yes, Miyabi. A freshman student asked her question. Professor Kujikawa, what happened to the refugees from Konoha? Did Emperor Namakazi make his peace with the Uchiha and Captain Hitaki? The professor, one Mayumi Kujikawa, nodded. He did. He made his peace with the Uchiha shortly after the refugees arrived in Kimen City. Hitaki was a bit harder due to his favoritism. But the emperor was not a cold man. Stubborn, but he could not deny their redemption. As for the others, they married, had children to continue their family line, some of them died out, while others are like the Namakazi, still around to the present day. A second student raised her hand. Professor, how do you know so much about this subject? Kujikawa smiled. I've been into ancient history for as long as I can remember. It's a passion of mine. She raised the book, which was titled History of the Unified West. The book itself was authored by both herself and her husband, who was a famous writer and lecturer of literature. Most people could not agree if it was fact or fiction. But what they did agree on was that it was a very good read. The ninja system in both East and West could not escape the changing times, and ended up collapsing, Kujikawa continued, but the Namakazi dynasty continued to rule, as they too changed with the times. In the end, it was not an uprising of the people that had brought the Namakazi clan to ruin. So what was it? Miyabi asked. Nature. Kujikawa replied. Mother Nature herself. The Laja Mountains were always a volatile region, but in the reign of the last emperor, Naruto 12 Namakazi, the Laja Mountains erupted, which triggered a massive earthquake. Days later, the unified West was engulfed in a tsunami, the land sinking into the ocean. Kujikawa remembered that even all too well. Both her and her husband had assisted in the evacuation of the imperial capital, knowing well that the days of the unified West were numbered. Aside from that, they also pilfered the Namakazi vaults underneath the imperial palace using several storage scrolls to seal up the chests of gold, but leaving more than enough cash to their clan, so that they can rebuild once again. They also took family heirlooms, jutsu scrolls and weapons that had been collected over the years. The reason being, Mayumi Kujikawa was just an alias. One of many in her long life. Her birth name was Hinata Hyuga, now Hinata Namakazi. Before another student could ask a question, the bell rang, signaling the end of class. But more importantly, the end of the day. It was time to go home. As the students piled out of the classroom, Hinata sat down in a chair and took a moment to reflect. Her hand rubbed absently on the mark where Naruto had bit her on their wedding night. It was shortly thereafter that Katami had taken both Naruto and Hinata to the side and explained the totality of the mark. As the both of you are mated, you will have fringe benefits. One of which is a long life. The Uzumaki were known for their long lifespans. When the both of you marked each other, that lifespan has increased 1,000-fold. Katami. Last she heard, the Nine Tails ran a curio shop in Hokkaido. They had not aged a day over 30, resorting to using henges to make themselves look older, or in some cases, relocate to a different area entirely. This was the 7th time that Naruto and Hinata were back in Japan. The last place they spent 30 years in was in Hong Kong, where their descendants from Mocha's bloodline resided. Minato's bloodline resided in Japan, and one of them were in Hinata's class. Of course, aside from Mocha and Minato, Naruto and Hinata had countless children over the years. Some of their lines still existed, while others were extinct. Their daughter, Yumi, was a student in elementary school, a recent addition to the Namakazi bloodline. Over the thousands of years, Naruto and Hinata had many occupations from assassin to daimyo to shogun to businessman. It was only recently that Naruto decided to write his memoirs, of which Hinata had been reading to the class. As for the other Jinchuriki, they were still alive as well. Utakata. They had left while he was in Hong Kong. Roshi and Han were in Okinawa. Yugito had settled in Seoul. Gaara made his home in the Mojave Desert, posing as an insane survivalist. B was somewhere in South America, and Fu made her home in England. Gathering her things and placing them into a shoulder bag, Hinata had decided that she had spent enough time walking down memory lane. Her husband was waiting for her. Tokyo University, campus. He stood in the midst of the students as they walked past him. 6 feet tall, with undisciplined reddish hair, a la Chris RE5 hairdo, blue eyes, his muscular frame hidden underneath the black longcoat and dark business suit. It was winter and the Christmas holidays had just begun. The cold had never really bothered him, being a former Jinchuriki. He was known as Takeshi Kujikawa to most people. A respected professor of literature here at Todai, as well as an accomplished writer. But to a select few, he was Naruto Uzumaki Namakazi. Naruto didn't have to wait long for his wife to make her presence known. Bundled up in her own overcoat and scarf, shoulder bags slung over one shoulder, Hinata Namakazi approached her husband with a smile on her face. Been waiting long, love? Nah. Just got here, Haim. Ready? He asked, extending his arm out. Hinata responded by slipping her arm through Naruto's own. The couple then walked off, until they were just another couple heading home for the holidays. Maybe one day, the Emperor will rise once again to lead, but now, he was just a family man ready to spend the holidays with his wife and daughter. The legacy of the Namakazi clan will continue.